I make a very big deal about my birthday. My friends know it. Like, if I don't get a text from you on my birthday, you're off my list. You're off my list. Like, it's the one thing that, like...
Sorry, when's your birthday again?
Yeah, you know when my birthday is, do you not?
Of course. It's July 17th, right?
Michael, you don't know.
I have no idea when your birthday is. That's it? We're not friends anymore?
I don't know. We have to have a discussion about it.
I built an entire company off of relationships. I took the time to get to know and really understand and appreciate them and respect them. And I was able to convince them to be willing to work for facilities that we were servicing. And so I think that had I been a guy, I probably could have not built the same relationships.
None of your business, Ushi.
None of your business, Michael.
It's the None of Your Business podcast, hosted by Michael and Ushi.
Welcome back, everybody, to another amazing episode of the None of Your Business podcast. Ushi, today is a very, very special day.
A rainy day. Very rainy. The whole week's been rainy.
Rain is special, by the way, for many, many reasons. You know that, right? So I actually like the rain. I thought about it the other day when it was raining. I'm like, what do you like to do when it rains?
Stay indoors.
Watch a movie.
Yeah, read a book.
Read a book. Good. There are a lot of things that you could do in the rain that are enjoyable to do in the rain. Watch your plant grow.
Yeah. Get your baseball game canceled.
Sounds like a Hasidic thing to say, you know, like, oh, it's going to grow the fruits and blah, blah, blah. Like, well,
I think it's just more of enjoying everything that life has to offer. And that's the way I try to look at it. Now, we are back with another amazing episode, and I'm excited today because we have my very good friend, Faygee Morgenshtern, here with us.
Aww.
And Faygee, we'll get to you in a minute. But first, I just want to remind everyone that the None of Your Business podcast is proudly sponsored by PrimeSource. Thank you for all our partners and associates and really our entire PrimeSource family for being behind this wonderful objective of, you know, reaching out to our audience and speaking about things that, you know, we want to grow with. Please don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. I must mention it every time because we need your help. And in order for us to get our voice out there, we need your help in liking and following and subscribing. Faygee and I have been to probably over a dozen trade shows in the past 2 years alone. And I think I met you through PPE, was it? Right?
Yeah.
And when I say PPE, it really triggers something for everyone, right? You say PPE and you'll be like, what? PP me? PP you? Who's right? I heard that from a friend of mine when we were involved in the world of PPE. But you say the word COVID and it triggers, right? For certain people, certain things. You say the word PPE and then it also triggers. So Faygee, we've spent a lot of time together during that crisis. And one thing I remember is we were helping people. And that was our main objective. And that was something that I think resonates with who you are as a person. And I'm excited to get to know you. And Ushi, I don't think you know Faygee as well as I do.
No, certainly not. But I know Faygee a little bit. We've crossed paths many times. I've seen her at trade shows as well. And I just learned something for the first time. I did not know that you two only met during PPE times, during COVID. I thought you had a relationship way past that.
I know, right? It was like we connected so well. Our synergy was right there.
Yeah. You guys really have a nice synergy between you two. And wow, your relationship was fast-tracked in only 3 years. This is like, to me, I thought it was a dynamic going on for like a dozen years at least.
Yeah, no, it feels that way. And it really is because our energies collided immediately. We both wanted to help as many people as possible during PPE.
Yeah, it really was that way.
I think that what we shared in common, and one of the reasons why we were so successful over the process of doing this is that we put people first. And we didn't care about making money. We cared about helping people.
It was really true. Like when we first started talking, it was like, we just need to get them what they need. That's all. Like, and that's really what mattered. And it was so enjoyable to be able to spend that time with you the way we had. I don't know, we had schmoozed like all the time during that time. And it was like as if we knew each other for forever. But we knew each other for a couple of weeks by the time you saw us.
Well, and for the record, I actually cared a lot about the money. I just want to be straight up. Now, I certainly felt good that I was also helping people at the same time. But my motive was purely the green. And I think a lot of people as well, okay, there was a lot of people taking advantage of the situation that was going on in COVID in many different ways. A lot of people were really taking advantage. I tried not to do that. I tried not to be excessive. But, you know, it was an opportunity for a lot of people to make money. A lot of people lost money. A lot of people lost jobs. A lot of people lost opportunities. COVID was not a pretty sight for, I want to say, most of America. For most of America. But there were a lot of winners in COVID as well. There were a lot of winners. typically in any type of situation, whether it's a tragedy, whether, it's a world event, a countrywide event, there are always going to be winners and losers.
Yeah. I mean, you lived in Muncie back then,
Yeah.
right? And then I guess you made enough money to bounce. Tell us about that experience. I mean, you had a lot going on during PPE. Anything that you want to share?
No, it was a good experience to have something happen to that extent, and where, I used my experience really and my connections to really help be able to do something, and where it was very out of the box. It was really pure luck to have done certain things at the timing that we decided to do that. And it worked out well for us. I got to do it with my husband. I never get to work with him. So it was like a short stint of 3 months, and where we got to collaborate in a way that's different than what our normal days look like. And it was really exhilarating in a certain sense. It actually, paid the bills, right? And that's a big portion of what we did. We have 5 kids, so it was important to make sure that we had an income that made sense. And it was enjoyable to have connected with people the way we had during that time, more than anything else. Like, I feel like I created certain type of relationships with people during that time. And it was like, you were able to see the good of people, but you also got to see the greed of people. Like, people became greedy really quickly. And some of the people that really lost a lot of money were people that turned greedy, in where they saw that there was room for them to make more money on certain things and charge more money. And then all of a sudden overnight, it was like they ordered the KN95s, and what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They got stuck with it. Do you remember that whole thing?
I remember one thing that we did, by the way, is every day at the end of the day, we would record
Oh yeah, we
how the day was. And we have so many videos.
Oh my God. I would just pull out my camera and be like, okay, we're recording this for the future, because we're going to look back at this and just have so much fun watching it. And every once in a while, I'll send some to Michael and be like, remember this day?
I did not know that you have recordings, because Michael, you also were extremely dialed in you couldn't talk to you. Like, you were in your own little world. You were busy nonstop.
Wait, do you still have the notebook?
I have the notebook.
I remember the notebooks.
And I even have the email
notebooks,
from
many notebooks.
Yeah, I even have the email from the White House.
Are you serious?
Yep, that we had a conference call with them.
Do you remember the house you rented? It was just like, you set up shop, like legit.
I set up
He's
shop.
He's like, Faygee, show up to this address. Stop showing up at my house. Like, this is where we're going.
The best part about it was I rented a house a few blocks away from me, and I, thank God, had the ability to employ, I think, over a dozen people. And whether we made money or not, every week they got a paycheck, and it was pretty amazing. We had a department for gloves, a department for masks, a department for international, and it was a great experience. But one of the best experiences, and I think the reason why we connected so much, is that there was a genius moment that occurred with both of us, and I'm going to remind you now what it was, is when there was a lack of staffing. This goes back to the root of Faygee, of what she does for a living. Some people, by the way, call you the agency mafia. I've heard of people call you staffing warrior. You're like,
heard that title very well. Just saying.
You wear everything very well, by the way. Look at that jewelry. That's amazing. How much are you worth today, by the way, just for what you're wearing?
Good down payment.
A down payment on a house.
Is that not weighing you down? Like, when you're walking, do you feel that pressure?
No, not at all. It makes me feel like I did something right,
I'm curious, why did you decide to not add a 6th one? Like, what was your limit that you decided? All right, this
you're
is
talking about the bracelet.
Yeah, she's got so many bracelets. She's got 5 bracelets on one hand. She's got
to even things out. So there's got to be some sort of balance.
Cool.
There's a rhyme and a reason for everything.
I like that idea, by the way. It does the opposite of weighing her down. It actually lifts her up.
Yeah, it reminds me of everything I've already accomplished and what I want to still do.
That's amazing. I feel like gold in general does that to us.
Yeah, that's a very interesting ring. What is that?
This is a panther.
Oh, it's a panther.
I think it's really
Look at that.
cool.
Wow. That's very
What made you
bulky.
get that ring specifically?
It's different.
It definitely is different.
The 3 different golds, and they sort of did a process with it, and where it ends up camouflaging it.
Oh, wow.
And it's a really heavy piece. You should feel it. It's a really cool piece.
It's definitely a down payment.
It's a really cool piece.
Are we?
Yeah, they only created a certain supply of this, and only for the U.S. market, so it wasn't readily available internationally. And because of so few people having it, it's why I wanted it.
And for all the Ziv fans out there, what watch are you wearing?
I'm wearing a Rolex Day Date with chocolate dial. Is that what they're called?
Beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
And a diamond bezel.
Speaking of beautiful, so we were in a situation where there was a friend of mine who had a challenge, and that is that there were no events happening in the entire world. There's no events happening, right? So he had waiter services, and those waiters were trained under him for over a decade, and they were committed. We're talking about over 100 waiters that had no jobs. And at the same time, we're talking to each other about the challenges and the pain points that nursing homes and assisted living homes were having, that they didn't have anyone to care for residents. They were lack of staffing. We got these waiters certified. We pitched open a tent. Did you know this?
I did not know that.
We pitched a tent and we had waiters come in every day, and Faygee herself trained them and got them authorized to be as temporary caregivers in nursing homes. We together were responsible for the placement of over 100 staff in nursing homes throughout our area.
Yeah, it was insane because it was something that the regulations allowed for them to not have the standard experience that they needed or training. It allowed them to take a certain test and a course, and it allowed us to be able to help support facilities locally in a way that was very outside the box, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
It was really
Well, that's
interesting
very
to be able to do
creative
that. Yeah.
Thinking. Like, you took a situation that was very dire and you turned it around into you actually gave these people potentially a new career path. Now maybe, they'll take this seriously. And
Some stayed. I actually know
I
a few that
imagine
stayed.
some
Yeah, of
would have
course.
stayed,
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And now they can actually go maybe and increase their degree and try to become even certified, and this is amazing. Wow, wonderful.
You know what's crazy? I just did a LinkedIn Live today talking about sales, and I was on with someone named Nathan from Apploy, and he is their director of sales. He's the strategy behind all their sales. And what he said to me was, if you're only going to do 10 phone calls a day, then you're giving yourself a lot of time in between each one of those calls for anxiety, right? So you're going to make cold calls today, but you're going to say, okay, I'm going to call these 10 people today. And what you're doing is you're filling up your schedule with just so few. So in between each call, your anxiety is kicking in. And I felt like during PPE, during that world, the reason why I had less anxiety while the world was sharing their common theme of anxiety is because we were just having hundreds of people that we were helping throughout the day. And we didn't let a minute go by without saying, okay, let's help the next person. Of course, we made money through the process, but
There was so much going on.
yeah.
We probably needed to be reminded to be showered at some point, some of the days, because it was like literally we spent 14, 16-hour days sometime. And you had to remind me okay, I think it's time for you to go home,
Yeah, we could do an entire episode just about the PPE process and COVID.
And everybody at PPE time was either buying or selling. Like, everybody that we knew, anybody, like people that had no relevance to healthcare.
I know, right? That was the crazy
They were selling
part.
something. They were selling a mask. They were selling, the K95.
All of a sudden they knew all the guidelines and they knew
Exactly. Everybody
what
was
it was.
CDC experts all of a sudden. They knew all the protocols. And everybody was buying and selling and negotiating and transacting.
And then you find out it's a 14-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
In a WhatsApp chat group.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
You're like, what's going on here?
Yeah, yeah. And all of a sudden everybody were, millionaires, and, they had endless amounts of funds to, invest and to buy, crazy amounts of stockpiles. And by the way, a lot of people got left holding the bag because of it.
Yeah,
They didn't
yeah.
exactly know what they were doing.
the proof of funds that were going on.
Oh my
Remember
God.
the
I
numbers?
think that one of the things that made us successful is that the first second I would pick up the phone, my instant reaction would be is two questions. Number one is, are you a broker? And number two is, do you have the goods on site?
Right.
Those are the two things that made us different, is because we were dealing with things that hospitals needed product and anyone promises that it was coming next week from China.
Yeah.
Right. So that was a very fascinating experience.
Do you remember
of
how
it.
we had the gowns show up and we would try them on? See, we'd have to have them pass through tests, right? Ourselves.
Right. We
But
were
did they
doing
actually
testing. You
rip?
understand? We had a lab internally. Yeah. We
You
were the
guys just had-
experts.
You know who really dropped the ball during this time?
Who?
Our government. The government did such a poor job in managing this crisis when it came to PPE. You saw, first of all, how underprepared they were. They were clearly caught off guard. They did not have enough emergency stockpiles anywhere. But even without the emergency stock, they didn't galvanize quick enough. They didn't get the cavalry going. Like, they were almost like deer in headlights is what they were. They were confused. They basically had to rely on the private sector to get things going. And it's only because of the private sector that we survived during that time and that we were able to get things, circulated and supply was made available. And it's just a scary thing to think about, that you can't ultimately rely on the government. Like, you cannot rely on them when blank hits the fan. Are you going to trust yourself and your friends and the people immediately, around you? Or are you going to trust your local government, the federal government? Absolutely not. What I took away from this is that every man for themselves. At the end of the day, everybody's got to fend for themselves and everybody's got to have a plan. That's where I'm a big fan of small government. We don't need the big government. We need them just to manage what we need them to do, right? The basics, they got to collect taxes. We got to circulate the money for social programs. I get it, but limited, very limited, because at the end of the day, they don't do as much for us.
I have to tell you, while you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, even your closest of friends, you have to fend for yourself. If push comes to shove at the end of the day, and you're underwater, and you have a friend of yours, and you're both drowning, God forbid, you need to step on him to get up, and he's going to need to step on you to get up. And it's a fight till the death, literally.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I feel like that's what everyone went through that process of feeling you really have to fend for yourself. You have to make decisions of, do I get shots? Do I give my children shots? Do I have valid ID cards? I mean, that was
insane. Like, to have the immunization cards to go anywhere. Think about the grocery stores in regards to like people hoarding the way they have. Like, people were really fending just for themselves and not for others.
What do you do about protecting yourself in your house? I've learned so much about you over the past few years. I feel like I don't know enough about your personal life, which I want to understand more. Like, you have a family of 5 kids, which I know. I've met your kids, of course. I've been to your house. Beautiful house, by the way. How much do you pay in taxes again?
Oh, sheesh. Enough.
Franklin Lake Township, I think is what it's called, right?
It's called Franklin Lakes, New Jersey.
Yeah, it's a
in
beautiful
Bergen
area.
County.
Is that like right off the Palisades?
No.
No. Nothing to do with the Palisades. Nothing to do with Muncie. But I was just thinking, like,
we're like 30 minutes from Muncie.
what are
We're
you
15
doing
minutes
at
from
home
there.
to protect your family from another potential, God forbid, catastrophe?
Well, first I have space right now. That's the one thing we didn't have in the old house. And I'm
Yeah.
like, if anything was to happen, it's why I moved. I was like, God forbid they shut us down again. Like, how am I going to survive in my old apartment like that? It would have not worked. It was insane. It was like,
So you lived in an apartment prior
I lived
to...
in a house.
Okay.
It was a much smaller house. It was literally probably a third the size of this house. And we had twins right before COVID. We had 2 nannies at the time. So think about how many heads in the same household at the same time. They hadn't left the entire time. When COVID started, for the first 6 months, nobody left the house. We were telling them if they left, they weren't allowed to come back. And so they just stayed. So literally from March through almost the end of the year, having 2 other heads above you like that are just sitting there all the time, 2 new babies in the house. There was just so much going on that, like, it just felt like the house was so claustrophobic. I was like, we have to move. God
Right.
forbid they shut us
I'm
down
happy
again.
that you have the space now. But tell us, back up. Tell us, where were you born? Where were you raised? Where'd you spend most of your childhood life?
Where
well,
were you raised? I don't even know this.
How do you not know this?
Was it Borough Park?
Yes, of
Well,
course.
instead of guessing, let's find out.
Yes, of course. Well,
Faygee, tell us your background, please.
yes, I grew up as a Hasidic girl in Borough Park.
Stop it.
Yes.
Stop
I'm
it.
serious. I still
No,
speak
I'm
a
pretending
fluent
to be
Yiddish.
surprised. I knew that, but if somebody would meet you for the first
They
time,
would never know.
they would be shocked.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Because, by the way, you carry yourself very, very well in the sense that you're not. I'm not sure if you're trying to disguise it or not. But the fact is, somebody talks to you for a few minutes, you would be very surprised to hear that you grew up Hasidic. You don't have an accent. You don't hear it in your voice. Obviously, in your demeanor, like, it's very interesting that you've clearly moved into the next phase.
That's a
Yeah.
compliment.
Yeah, I take a lot of pride on like having gotten to that stage and where I wasn't that rebel that like, okay, I'm upset about stuff that happened. It was more so experiences that got me to this stage and where I have to grow up and become me. And it can't just be me based on the version my mom or my siblings want me to be. It has to be
course
me
not.
for who I want to be.
Good for you. So
And of course-
where did you grow up?
I grew up in Borough Park. I went
Borough
to
Park.
Pupa school. Like, I literally went to Hasidic school my entire life, like, until I got married. I got married right out of school. I was the first graduate to get
Was
married.
your husband also from a Hasidic family?
My ex-husband was from a
Oh, this is
Hasidic
your
family.
your ex,
yeah.
first husband. Okay.
Yeah, so we were 2 Hasidic people getting married with each other. I was married 9 years the first time. I've since remarried, have an amazing husband. We've got kids together. And yeah, I feel like I've come like a whole long way from where I started, but I'm very close to my family and they've accepted me for who I am, but I am the black sheep. I am very different than they are, but it took time for them to learn to accept who I've become.
And when was that? At what point in your life did it change for you that you realized, I don't want this life, I want something else? Like, where were you at that point? How old were you? And what triggered?
It's a great question. Like what you said earlier, like that revelation.
Yeah, when did you really know that this is what I want to do and I'm changing things?
Yeah, over the course of my first marriage is when like things were going a certain way and I'm like, I stopped believing. And not believing had me feel like I need to believe in something else. I need to believe in myself first more than anything else. And so I had to start figuring out what I believed in, what I liked, what I enjoyed, what it is that I wanted to do for my kids and what I wanted to represent myself for them more importantly than anybody else. And really, I was like, this Hasidic lifestyle isn't me. May have not been me for a long time, but I kept like wearing the garb and outside, like we were living this religious lifestyle, but internally at the house, my ex-husband was never religious. He would watch Friday night WWE every single week. This was something that went on for years, but he wore the Hasidic garb. So behind closed doors, nobody would know. Right. And so, when I started changing how I looked, my parents were very much like, you must be wrong because you're changing and he's still wearing his Hasidic clothes. So whatever
you're the problem.
That I must be, the issue. So it took a while. It took 2 years for my mom to come around and learn to accept who I've become. And, I hadn't talked to the family for 2 years, like as I was going through that divorce process, because they didn't agree with it. They felt that it was wrong. And my siblings fell in line with it because it's hard to have a voice when your parents are specifically adamant that I'm wrong, they're right, and that's how it's going to be.
Yeah, they were judging you, and they expected you to conform to what they want.
Yeah,
it wasn't about what you wanted. You were an adult already at that point.
It's what the world will see, right?
Yeah.
So it's not about what they feel like is right or wrong, more so what their friends and their colleagues and their
shame. They were afraid of the shame.
Yeah, and I would be the first one that like.
It's wrong to get divorced. Is that what you're saying?
For my mom and her generation, it was very much like that, like how it created a certain name that like inflicted shame on the family. And she didn't want that. She's like, suck it up, make it work, and that's it. We all do that. Like, why are you different? Why do you need to leave? Why, like, who said it's okay? You want to be different? That's why? That's not cool. Like, you got to do this for your kids, and you've got like all this going on. Why do you feel like you have to do that? I only had one sibling that said, whatever you decide to do, I'm backing you, and really it helped motivate me to continue on the path that I started. But it was scary. It almost like was very intimidating to like want to continue to move forward, because it was like, it's almost they were incentivizing me to stay in where I'm at, because that fear of having to do this on your own. And for 2 years, it was my sister and my really close friends and the people I worked with that really made the difference of me feeling like, got my support system, regardless about anybody else. This is how I'm going to do it. And we're going to continue on that. And it worked out great. It really, overall, it had changed the relationship that I had with my siblings over time. My husband is actually the one that helped re-engage the relationship with my mom. And his mom died when he was 12. So for him, it was important that like, your mom's still alive. I want anything in the world to at least just be able to tell her something, right? And so like, your mom's still alive. Let's at least make sure she knows how you feel. And so he really was the one that made that relationship, evolve into where she's very respectful. We've got a very different relationship now. I am who I am. I'm not going to change for anybody anymore. But most importantly, that fear that I had for my mom had changed, right? And so as a kid, I was so fearful about becoming who I am because what will my mom say? Or she's going to yell at me, or she's not going to let. Heck, my mom was those moms that would like throw out stuff I bought because she didn't agree with it. And like, I'd laugh because back in the day, it was like a long denim skirt. If only she just like wanted me to still wear that denim skirt now more than what I currently wear, right? But it was like, I was so fearful of everything. So I ended up doing things I didn't agree to because I was scared of what she'll say, versus once I was able to do that without her for 2 years, I'm like, I could do anything at this point. I don't need to worry about, her approval anymore. I don't need to worry about anything. And it really was a game changer in regards to who I was able to become based on that.
As a friend, I have to tell you, I'm super proud of you for what you, I mean, look at you. You turned that emotional weight into gold weight. And you do it so beautifully. I'm curious what that transition was like for you from a financial standpoint. Meaning, part of the fear is that you don't want to do what you want to do because you're scared. You don't have the financial capacity. So when did you figure that part out, that you have a skill that you can make money on? Like, how was that transition for you?
So the one thing that I get very passionate about is things that I do that I enjoy. I get very passionate about it, and I end up wanting to learn as much as I can about that. And I basically worked for this company, got to have a really close relationship with my boss. Really, it was like being in the right place at the right time and different scenarios happening, which allowed me to continue to grow. So I learned how to like verify a timesheet. It was a home care company. And everything else I really learned from like just watching how people were doing it, asking questions. And I, was upgraded to the director of operations in a very short amount of time. And I really got to know everything about home care, every single step of that process. And I worked that company for 10 years before I left. And it was amazing because I was the breadwinner. It allowed me to feel much more comfortable about I'm supporting him. I could for sure comfortably support myself without him on my books too, right? So like, for me, it was easier than most other women out there, that maybe don't have that financial asset to themselves, and where it's more so, maybe they have to have a 2-person income in order to make it work, or they're the stay-at-home mom. It makes it really difficult to be able to have that opportunity to just say, you know what, that's it. I'm going to do this. And I'll never forget the day it was in December. I had a holiday party for work, and that's the day that he got served. And that face was like the one thing that like kept me going. Like, I knew I did the right thing when I saw what he got. He knew he was wrong, wouldn't admit it up, he's obviously back then, but it was like my first step to freedom in a way that I couldn't even explain. It was like the best Christmas gift I could have ever asked for, like it was just that amazing.
Or Hanukkah gift.
Or Hanukkah gift,
Hanukkah miracle.
When you say served, you mean the divorce papers?
Yeah, the divorce papers. It was
was he blindsided by it? Or
yeah, because he never expected it. I was the type of wife that kept my mouth fully shut at all times. I never show emotions. I left it to myself. I was like, he kept saying things, and it was like I was the punching bag, but I just took it, and it taught me a skill. And what it really taught me is like, how do you learn to live with somebody that you're forced to basically live with? Because my mom said I can't come home. How do you learn to live with the, verbal abuse that somebody can say all the time? And learning how to cope with that was really mechanisms that I was able to incorporate in my professional life and personal life, in whatever it may be, in a way that was conducive for me, and where words generally hurt a whole lot, and learning how it shouldn't hurt as much, or being able to make it seem like, oh, he's not really talking to you. This is really words he just has to get out, and you're just listening. Pretend it's a TV show and that's it, right? And so learning how to deal with that really helped me learn a skill set that allowed me to survive.
Wow. Good for you, Faygee.
Yeah.
And I imagine that was very liberating for you the first time, that you were just focused on you, right? You weren't focused on what other people are thinking, be it your parents, be it your ex-husband, your community, or whoever it was. And think of it now, where you're leading a beautiful life, you have a beautiful family, professionally you're doing very well. This could have been potentially non-existent had you not made that decision and that jump. And this should give really inspiration to others who are, and let's not kid ourselves, there's a ton of people that share the same story, the same background as you, where they're stuck in their mold because that's what's expected of them. They don't know how to get out of it. They just simply don't know how to get out of it. And they'll go their whole lifetime, their entire life, they'll go not living their best selves because of it. And you have a real story to share. And a lot of people can take a page out of your book and follow the path that you did. And I'm not endorsing people, to just, give up their lives and start new ones. I'm not saying that. Just saying that there's, don't be afraid to test the waters, to give yourself a better life.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I see happens often is that we're angry. So maybe I got out, but now I'm angry. And that anger isn't helping you become a better person. It's just keeping you in the past. So really being able to figure out a way of how do you strengthen yourself, and where you can cope temporarily short term, but more so long term, right? And what are the things that you can do to help yourself really grow into the person that you are now able to become, more so now that you've got the choices to make for yourself. And I feel like I only became the person I am today because of all the instances and the experiences I had to go through. And so I'm not upset about everything that happened. Obviously, it was extremely painful going through all these things. But from hindsight, I'm like, I could have never become me, right? And, being in a world where, when I first started in healthcare, it was scary for me. I had opportunities that, friends and colleagues helped me get to stages in where I'm at right now. And I'm really grateful for everything that they've done to help me get there, but it was scary. I'd never worked in a nursing home. I had experience, working in home care, and I was really good about what I did, but I had no inkling about nursing homes until, I ended up being lucky enough to get a job with, an amazing person that really helped mentor me into where he's like, something I don't, I know the flip side. Let's work together on really doing that. And that's the opportunity I had at Cypress Skilled. And it was my first experience really working in the nursing home space. And I loved it. I felt like there's so much that home care can have taught me, I should say, in a way that most others coming from the nursing home side would have never known. And, in home care, I got to know it so well enough that I was the end all to everything in regards to if you couldn't fill a shift. And of course, in home care, if I physically didn't get somebody to Michael's house, he wouldn't get care, right? And so I had to learn a skill, and that was building relationships that allowed me to be able to convince Ushi, say you were a CNA on our team, and I'd convince you to go to him. And what I built with the people was that I got to know them, and I saw that it cost nothing. I have a great memory, thank God. So I know you, and I know your story. I knew where you worked, what days of the week you worked, what shifts, what your patient's name was, everything about you. And so they would come and pick up their checks, and I would literally say, hey, Ushi, so how's your mom doing? She was sick last week. Did she have the surgery? And they'd be amazed at how much I could remember. And we had over 1,500 employees I was doing payroll for on a weekly basis. And they're like, whatever you need, just call me. Like, I know you'll always remember me and you'll repay the favor. And that's literally how I got to make sure that every hour we could have billed for got covered. By hook or by crook, it didn't matter the day, it didn't matter the time. I almost had people arguing that they want to do it for me first, and I shouldn't call the other person. I call me rather. Doesn't matter what. Just call me. I'll make sure to do it for you.
Do you remember the Palm Pilot? You guys remember the Palm Pilots? Yeah, it's like that little device that you keep.
Oh, with the little thingy.
Yeah, their names and their phone numbers.
Yeah, the little
one of the first things they had, other than a name, phone number, and address, was birthday. They actually force you. It was one of their suggestions, like put in that person's birthday, and I use that a lot. And people are amazed at how I remember their birthday. I'm like, I don't remember your birthday. It's just in my system and it reminds me.
By the way, regarding birthdays, all my friends know when my birthday is. I demand it. I make a very big deal about my birthday. My friends know it. Like, if I don't get a text from you on my birthday, you're off my list. You're off my list. Like, it's the one thing that, like...
Sorry, when's your birthday again?
Yeah, you know when my birthday is, do you not?
Of course. It's July 17th, right?
Michael, you don't know.
I have no idea when your birthday is. Everyone's in my phone. What can I tell you?
It's not on the Palm Pilot anymore?
It transformed from my Palm Pilot to my BlackBerry,
of course,
to my Samsung. That's it? We're not friends anymore?
I don't know. We have to have a discussion about this.
I don't believe I have to know your birthday by heart. That's like saying you have to remember my cell phone number. I don't know.
No, it's not the same thing.
It's not the same.
Remember the cell phone, I'm remembering a birthday. It's not
fine. It's not, but I don't have to remember your birthday. I have to write it down.
You ever heard of a movie, V for Vendetta?
No.
You ever heard of that?
No.
Steph, you ever heard of that movie? No. Interesting. Okay. So there was a movie.
Teach us.
One of the characters in that movie had a line that he used to say, remember, the 5th of November. That was his line that he used to say. Happy to see my birthday is November 5th.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I use that.
I have to make a mental note of this.
I
must make a mental note of
the 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November. Okay,
I use that tagline a lot. And I really like celebrating birthdays. My family my parents instilled this in us. They always made a big deal about our birthdays. And they would always do a birthday party for us. We get to invite our friends, and they bought pizza or whatever they bought, and we did an activity. And my parents didn't have a lot of money growing up, but for this, they always splurged. Like, they made sure that we had a good birthday party. And for me, growing up now, birthdays are a big deal.
I have to tell you, I love it. I got to be honest with you.
They're a big deal.
I do love that concept.
Big deal.
Yeah.
My wife, for example, she doesn't care for birthdays. She was surprised when she married me. Like, I was making a big deal about the first time I had a birthday. She was like, what?
Coming in with balloons.
Yeah, she was like, why? You're so into your
Yeah,
birthday.
and it's funny because I'm coming from the opposite place. Like, my parents never celebrated our birthdays. Like,
is that your family thing or a Hasidic thing, you think?
I think our family in particular didn't do that. I think some of our friends
in general
did.
Don't celebrate
some of my friends had birthday parties.
Hasidim do not celebrate birthdays. It's not something that they care about, and they don't make a big deal about it at all.
It's not as big of a deal. I agree. Very few of my friends ever celebrated their birthdays. It wasn't a big deal. It was like, it's just a regular day. Even at school, nobody's saying happy birthday for you or anything like that.
It's a real shame, because a birthday is more than just the fact that it's the day you were born.
I agree.
It's a day that you get to celebrate you. It's one day a year that it's about you, right? And everybody can have their moment. Everybody can have a little bit of their space.
I make a really huge deal on birthdays. I agree.
Having a birthday being recognized is one of those things that everybody should instill into their life, is to make a big deal about the people that you care about, at least your friends, your family. Make a big deal about their birthday. Give one day. They can't have one day that it's all about them and prop them up and make them feel good and say nice things and take them out so they can be the center of attention. Everybody loves that.
I'm curious, by the way, what happens if you have a friend who has the same birthday as you?
Oh, it's a big problem.
That's competition at its highest level.
Thank God I don't have that. But I will say that my son has his birthday that he shares with a friend of mine, his son, and my son have the same birthday. So, I feel bad for him that he has to share his birthday with somebody else, but I would not be able to handle sharing my birthday with another person that at least is directly involved.
I'm curious, if your wife would have had the same birthday, what would you have done?
That's a tough one. Then we can celebrate together. Maybe it
You know
wouldn't
what
be
I
so
don't like? When birthdays fall on like a holiday, because then it ends up taking away from the birthday. Like
Right.
you end up celebrating like, my kids are born around Hanukkah, and really like they end up getting presents for Hanukkah, and it happens to be it's your birthday too, so let's just drum all in together.
No,
It's really
that's
unfair.
unacceptable.
It's really unfair. It should be separated.
Use your Hebrew birthday in that example.
That's true.
You should
That's
usually
true.
get two options.
I make a very big
Whatever
deal
thing works
about
better
birthdays.
for you, the Hebrew or the English.
You can do both.
I have
it's
some
okay.
friends that were born on September 11th, and they
Really?
can't stand it. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
whole different world for them.
That's a bad day to have as a
Yeah,
birthday.
they didn't plan it, but
Right,
yeah.
that's a bad. My wife is a New Year's baby. She's January 1st.
Okay.
Yeah, January
Wow,
1st.
that's
That's a
cute.
very nice.
But
nice
again,
day.
you're busy celebrating the new year.
exactly.
Well,
exactly.
they missed the tax returns. I feel bad for the parents.
Yeah.
Like, she's just been born like December 31st.
Yeah. Do you know that for new babies that are born, up to a certain hour of the first day, the government gives you like a certain stipend for diapers,
Really?
baby wipes. Yeah. The hospital they fill out certain
Interesting.
paperwork, and as a New Year's baby, the government recognizes you as a new citizen. You're born in the new year. They give you a stipend.
They're trying
for
to make-
certain supplies.
They're trying to make up for the taxes you just missed. Really, that's
exactly.
all.
But my wife missed that cutoff. She wasn't born up to that hour.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
it's
so
only
she
for
missed
certain hours.
both?
You have to be born literally
Damn.
from 12 o'clock, January 1st, till like 3 or 4 in the morning. You have to be born. If you're born in between that, then you go on record as one of those New Year babies.
Speaking
Wow.
of babies and birthdays, Faygee, you as a woman, I want to talk about this for a second because Ushi and I had a discussion several podcasts ago about the concept of women in the business place and, if there are any struggles that are different today than it used to be. Congratulations for everything you've done. You built a fantastic organization. You're responsible for how many employees?
Nearly 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you're overseeing employees in facilities. That's
Yeah.
like thousands.
We're
of
helping
them.
support a bunch of facilities.
How many
yeah.
employees would you say in that business you're overseeing? Like,
Well, we help coordinate a whole lot of labor on the agency side for
Yeah.
so many facilities at this point. I think we're at 250,000 hours a month that we're servicing.
what?
250,000 hours a month.
250,000
Agency
hours
being
that
supported
you're managing
by
a
our
month.
team
Wow.
for our network.
That's amazing. So look
Yeah.
at that. I mean, what you've built. When did you feel ever struggle of being a woman in this industry? Did you feel it? How did you feel it? I'm very curious because you're finally the first woman that we actually have on our show since that discussion.
And we've had a discussion about this, and we have a certain disagreement, a certain difference. And
I'm curious what
I
you
actually
what we
listened to
believe.
the
So I want to hear it
podcast.
from your mouth.
I actually listened to the podcast and I found it interesting because you were sharing about, somebody that's the MDS coordinator or whatever her title is. And
Look at you
I actually
quoting from
listened.
our podcast.
Yeah,
She's a
of
fan.
course.
From 4 or 5 podcasts ago.
First of all, you guys have to talk
Halfway
faster. I
through, so
literally
we-
listen at 2 times speed. Okay. That's how fast I have to listen to things. Okay. That's
Okay.
my usual speed.
Most people.
But I
do.
was listening to it in my fashions that I tend to listen to things most random times. And I was thinking about it. I was like, I think that some people feel that because they're a woman, they feel different. I think that because of my experiences, though, I segregated myself from that stage when I first came into healthcare as different already because I felt different. I already felt like I was much stronger than most people because of where I've been.
You endured a lot.
Yeah. And so I felt like, you know what, maybe I don't look like a guy, but I dress, in a certain way. And I wear my pants very well. So I'm okay with that. And I felt like it's a choice to make if you want to make it feel different or not. Yes. Was it different at ECAP back in the day and where you would go and there were very few women? Absolutely. It felt, like, hey, I would have loved to see more women over here. But I think that the few women that were coming, we connected well and we continued to show up every year. And every year we got to see more folks come. And now they've got, the women of ECAP that they do every year and different things. But I think it's a choice to make to decide that, I'm a woman, you're a man, and I can't do the same thing.
Well, let me phrase it to you this way then, because I want to force feed this to you, because I want you to
Sure.
really answer this question. Do you think you would have been even more successful right now had you been a man? Now, but don't just answer that right away. I want you to think about it for a second. Okay, imagine if you were, not Faygee Morgenshtern. Imagine if you were a Faygee Morgenshtern, okay? And you had all the qualifications that you have right now, and you know everything that you know. Do you think you would have been more successful, or do you think that you maximized, even in your situation, being in healthcare, as a woman, as an Orthodox woman, do you think that you maximized, or were you missing out on something?
No, I think that from my perspective, we created something that was very unique and we piggybacked off something that needed to happen. We were servicing a strike and I piggybacked building my entire company off the concept of how we serviced that strike. And I think that the relationship skills that I had really helped drive everything. I built an entire company off of relationships with actual providers. These were people I never paid for a penny out of my pocket for these people, but these are people that I took the time to get to know and really understand and appreciate them and respect them. And I was able to convince them to be willing to work for facilities that we were servicing at much lower cost because they couldn't afford to pay anymore. And so I think that had I been a guy, I probably could have not built the same
You
relationship.
think it actually served you?
It actually did.
You think that it
because
actually was an asset for
think
you?
about the amount of CNAs and nurses. How many of them are actually women and how many of them are men? There are actually more women
Correct.
on the clinical
Mhm.
side than men. So
Correct.
for me, it worked in the favor of I was able to be that really sweet woman that called you, that asked you to do me a favor, and you had a hard time telling me no. I'm
Wow.
very
But
convincing.
She turned that totally around because we were basically asking, did you ever feel like victimized in a way that, or marginalized because you're a woman, that maybe you're not as successful because of it? She's actually saying, no. I actually used everything to my
I
advantage.
really did.
In being a woman that I think I outweighed had I been a man. I think I'd be more so. That's amazing, by the way. Credit to you, because a lot of people get mired and stuck in their victimization, right? And they don't actually ever get out of it. And you not only got out of it, but not only overcame it, but you actually even excelled. You actually did, you're one step up, which is amazing. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, we started this during COVID, and it was literally out of necessity that I had to do something to support a strike, right? And it really, really taught
Explain
me.
what that means, support a strike, because
Yeah, so we
for our
had
listeners.
we had a relationship with an organization that had 11 of their buildings go on strike with 10 days notice,
So no employees now.
and pretty much all their CNAs, their
They're allowed
dietary
to do that
housekeeping.
10 days in advance. Is that a law? Or?
That's the required notice that they generally give for a strike.
So you have to give 10 days notice to go on strike. You can't
So
just
the
go on
union
strike.
is giving the strike, right?
So the union
unions-
law protects the operator by at least giving them 10 days. Is that a thing?
Yeah, but you know what 10 days are?
Nothing.
Like, is
It's not-
during,
10 days is
during
nothing,
COVID,
right.
it was the week of Thanksgiving. That's when they did that. Like they're
Wow.
so
Strategically.
purposeful. Yeah, on like what days of the week they're choosing to do things sometimes. And pretty much I saw how, what's the most strategic way to handle a strike would be. And because there were 11 facilities in different neighborhoods, I was like, I think we need to create like one hotspot. Everybody shows up to that hotspot because it allows me the opportunity, A, to get to know the people. And knowing my skill set, it's really good about building relationships and memorizing things. I know that if I could get them there one day, I could convince them to come back as many times as I need to. So I literally had the buses that would generally take the residents to their doctor's appointments, which obviously wasn't happening. It was during like COVID. It was in lockdown. Chicago was literally locked down when this was all going on. And I had these vans waiting for the staff to show up, the providers to show up at 5 a.m. every single day. So we had 2 12-hour shifts, and everybody came to this Holiday Inn that agreed to have all these cars get parked in the back. They were at 12% capacity at that time. And so they're like, sure, do whatever you have to do. We had to wear masks. We couldn't sit in the lobby. Their restaurants were closed. The hotel was super shitty, I have to tell you. I will never stay in a Holiday Inn again. I probably have a terrible case of PTSD on that nights that I slept there. But it literally led me to be able to see what I can do with the power of just a damn relationship, which costs nothing, right? And literally, I was passing around my phone number. People were calling and texting my phone at all hours of the day, and I would just take the time to respond. I barely ever sleep ever. So for me, this was perfect. 80% of my communication was happening on text messaging after that experience with the strike, and where I was able to convince these people to literally help me staff facilities. And the cool portion is that we were able to do this on behalf of the facilities at a fraction of the cost of what they were paying. And we literally capitalized on being able to leverage relationships that I had built using agency partners. And the only way we really staffed the strike in the first place was using personal relationships that I had with people. Like, shout out to Town Nursing, like Duvi Greisman and his team stepped up in a way that was so conducive. Jared from Regional Care Network, like these people literally stepped up and came into a new state with 10 days notice to help prepare. These people were getting on the call with me at 4 a.m. Like people on their team were getting on with me at 4 a.m. to confirm, don't worry, these people are showing up. Heck, the people at Town and Regional Care were helping with coordinating Ubers sometimes if somebody couldn't get to the location to get to that hotspot.
Wow.
It was amazing about what they did. And it wasn't like I did business with them before. We had professional relationships. I met these people at trade shows. That's where I met them. But I called Divvy up and I said, I need your help. We have these facilities going on strike. Are you willing to help? And he's like, he coordinated a meet with his team. Like these things happen at 10:30 at night. And because we had so little notice, we knew we had to get things up and running. The team at Employ helped to make sure that they were able to get set up to recruit the staff. It was like amazing about how quickly we were able to turn things around. 70% of the staff came from just these two agencies that were based out of like New York and New Jersey, roughly for most of their time that's where they serviced. And they came into this new state for me just to help me.
Wow.
And it was crazy because
Very
none of the
resourceful.
locals.
What did you say? I
Amazing.
mean, this is a very daunting task. 10 days notice.
Oh, it
Now,
was insane.
you got to actually find people. And this is, by the way, Michael, for us, a teachable moment is not everything is about investing money. Currency is not necessarily actually money. Your currency was building relationships,
Yeah.
which what you said didn't cost you any money. You didn't take any money out of your pocket. You just spent time. You spent time with the people. You got to know the real them. You actually integrated yourself into their life, make it more intimate. And you actually monetized on that. You were able to use that to your advantage. And it's serving you very well in your business right now. So relationships, building relationships. People buy from people, right? And that's the most important thing. It's not necessarily what you're selling. It's not how good your product is or how amazing your service is. It's about you. What are you going to do to make my life easier, to make my life better? What are you bringing to the table? And I think that's really ultimately what people want to see in others.
It's true. Like our name for our brand, like People Power Nursing, this was something that Adam actually at Employ was the one that suggested the name. And really, we live for that every day. The amount of people that we impact on a daily basis.
What does employee even mean? Where does that name come from?
Employ?
Yeah, isn't that what you just said?
Yeah. So Employ is a company that we work with closely.
Right.
Employ's got great brand recognition on doing a lot for our industry.
Yeah, they're all
and
over the place.
changing the
Great.
way that, people hire. Now with their staffing platform, literally changing the way you can be organized about your staffing. There's so much value that I've been able to see personally in my career with them that I've grown with them. And
No, but I'm just curious about the name. Where they come up with employ? What does that mean?
Employ.
No, it's employ.
No, I know. I'm using it.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out.
Someone
Yeah.
creative.
Yeah.
You know what?
I'm sure there's something. We have to ask Adam about that.
It's like a random name.
But
Employ.
but it's stuck, and he's managed to build a great company. I love and appreciate what
By the
he's
way,
been able to do.
speaking of which, we're going to get right into it now then. We always like to ask our guests if they would pick another guest that would be a good person to be on our show. Who would be your pick?
Adam would be my pick.
It sounded like it. That's why I
Yeah.
was jumping on that
Yeah.
opportunity.
Adam would be our pick.
Adam
and-
would be your pick?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's due time for you to ask him to join our show. I mean,
we'll talk to him. I'm sure we can convince him to do this with us. I think that we're both very passionate about.
He
what
has
we
a
do.
lot to offer in terms of his background and his what he does in general for sales, marketing, software, technology, advancement, and just togetherness. I would look forward to having.
I want to, if it's okay, I want to go back for a minute to a topic we were talking about earlier. Given your background and your history and your relationship with your parents early on versus your relationship now, I also have a lot of family members, friends that went through a very similar life cycle, right? Where they grew up in a certain way, whether it was an ultra-Orthodox environment, and they slowly, I wouldn't say strayed because that has a negative connotation, but they changed their life course, okay? They completely changed, how they live their life. And a lot of times it worked out, for the positive. A lot of times it made them better people. It made them healthier people, happier people. Not always. Sometimes it has the adverse effect. Sometimes people actually go out on their own and they don't quite make it and they deteriorate. And, you're very fortunate that it really worked out for you in the end and you had support. Not everybody gets that support. And sometimes these people are alone. And sometimes it leads them to very, very dark places. So I know both sides of the spectrum. I know a lot of people from each side. But one thing I want to ask you and kind of get your take on this, because I'm curious how you interact, with your parents or your family even, not even just your parents. Let's assume there's a event. One of your brothers is making a wedding, okay? And at the wedding, it's a Hasidic wedding. They have a certain type of, an environment that they have at their weddings, especially how people dress. Everybody has to come in their strimals and their bekishes, especially family, right? So when you would go to a wedding, I don't know if you have brothers or sisters who made weddings or not, but something like that, are you going with your hair uncovered? Are you covering your hair out of respect for what they want? It's in their space. Or you want to be you. And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious what you do, because I do think there are some that take it to the extreme level where it becomes somewhat disrespectful, where they're almost wanting to show it up and put it in your face a little bit
It's
too
like
much.
almost like Dafka.
Like they're
you
doing
have
it in
to show
spite.
you.
They're doing it in spite. But you, I know, you're obviously very, very mature, you're worked out, and you're in a good place. So you being in a good place, what do you do when you go to a family event? How do you go? Do you go dressed, in a certain way? Are you going to try a little bit, or no, that's not what you want to do, and they don't even expect that?
So I like to dress classy, right? So I'm going to dress in a way that's conducive that I don't look like the oddball out, right? But I will be respectful about things. I don't personally own a wig, so I will just pretend this is my wig. And I'll always say, I just had it freshly washed. Doesn't it look great? But
that works.
Yeah.
Love
Look,
it.
it's something that I won't change. I'm not ready to cover my hair, and I'm not just changing that for anybody anymore. At this point, when I decided I'm not covering my hair, it was like, done deal. I'm not doing it anymore.
But do you make any attempt to do something that you typically would do on your own if you were somewhere else, but because you're going here, you're going to do something different? Whether it's wearing less jewelry, whatever it might be, I have no idea.
I like to be myself. I like to be myself, but I will choose a dress choice that makes sure that I'm not wearing something way too short that they'll feel uncomfortable to have me around, right? And so I don't want to be that person that will intentionally, do certain things, but I'm not putting on no tights. So I'll still wear a short dress that will be close to my knees or right below my knees, but I'm not going to put on tights for them. Everybody else could wear tights. Everybody else could wear their shtreimel and their wig, but we're not going to change who we are as people. My husband doesn't own a hat, right? So there's nothing he's going to start buying in order to come to the wedding. He's going to wear a suit like he always does. And yes, when we take pictures, he will look different because they're all wearing the same black, Bekisha and everything. And he will dress with what he wears. And because we're the only ones that are like that for my siblings, we end up looking different. But I think that I still come across as respectful when I can. And I will be respectful when I show up at my mom's house. And sometimes if I feel like she'll be uncomfortable, I just tell her, well, you could come sit in my car so I don't have to come out if you don't want me to. And it works, you know?
Listen, this is obviously very, lengthy conversation that you can have on this topic, but I know people on both sides of the spectrum that are ultra respectful when it comes to, their background and the people that were in their previous life. I know someone who does cover her hair when she goes to an event, even though she doesn't cover her hair ever outside. But when she goes to a certain event, she has a wig just for that reason, and she covers her hair. And I actually think that's very nice. I think that's very respectful that she does that. And then I know others that are exactly the opposite. Not only will they not go and cover their hair, but they're going to go out of their way to remind everybody that, this is not who I am, this is not who I want to be, and they'll go a little bit cut above. They'll go a little bit extra oomph because they want to make that certain impression. And that, to me, is a problem.
It's usually an immaturity thing.
I think that's a little bit too much.
I agree.
Because think about it, you don't want to be judged, right? Your whole thing is, let me live my life, but you're now judging them. Because you're saying not you. I'm saying these people are now judging them by saying your ways are antiquated, they're old, and they're old-fashioned, and they're wrong, and therefore I'm going to come and I'm going to show you that this is who I am, and that's in a way judging them of their values and what they want and what they respect. So I think people should try to conform. There's a lot of merit to say that if your parents or your family members are a certain way, when you're amongst them, I think you should try to blend in as much as you can. And you know what? It's just for that period of time. It's not the end of the world. You're leaving. Now go back to your regular life. Do whatever you want to do. But when you're around, you owe it. I think you owe it to your parents and to your family to try to be as much as you can the way they want you to be when you're with them. When you're not with them, you can do whatever you want. That's just my take. It's my opinion. I could be very wrong on this. Could be a lot of people are going to... Mike, what do you think?
I'm going to say I have a lot to say about this topic.
I already know, Michael, you're going to disagree.
I have some things to say too, but go ahead, Michael.
I'm just going to say, to start off with, to a certain extent, because why don't you put yourself in that person's shoes for a moment, okay? You're not conforming with the way your family was growing up because you're leading a different life, which is your own life. And like Faygee said... Which is your right. So you want me to walk into an event and not be myself? And to what extent? I understand the respect idea. I'm a fan of it. There's certain elements of being respectful when you're going into a shul or a synagogue or joining a Shabbat dinner or, certain things that are respectful, that you're part of the traditional things that you're doing. Just like if you join an Indian dinner, you might put a scarf over your neck, and that's okay. But that's it. To me, that's it. I'm not asking anyone to conform for me, and I don't want to conform for anyone unless it makes sense within my environment of me being true and honest to who I am. Why don't I have a right to not keep my hair covered and be myself coming into an event? Why don't I have the right for people to know who I am? Why do I have to fake it? There are going to be people that I'm going to meet at this event that don't know me. And then they're going to look at me and say, oh, you're a person that covers your hair. And the conversation is going to be like, they're going to ask me, like, when am I going to shul next? And I don't want that conversation. I want them.
We're not saying anything different, except that you think the line
Yes.
may be a little bit further than what I'm saying.
Exactly, yes.
So we both agree
Okay.
that to a certain point.
Let's agree to agree.
Yeah, but this is where I want to disagree with you on. And I want to make sure that we have this battle.
Yes.
Where is that line?
Where is that line?
But I
Where is
also
that
think
line?
there's one extra step, right? The respect has to go both ways, right? So you can't expect me to show up a certain way, however I feel respectful enough to come, right? So like, don't have expectations that I'm going to cover my hair for you. Don't have expectations I'm going to try and do whatever I can to make you feel comfortable. But you need to be accepting that I'm not the same person, that grew up in your house anymore either.
Have
right?
you ever been asked to leave or to cover up? Did that ever happen to you?
So I'm sure over the years I've been asked to do certain things, especially when it came to like my ex-husband and his family and the way things were there. But I think that the one thing that my family's done really well is to make sure that I feel like I belonged again. And they've done a really good job at never telling me anything about things, and it could be a portion of it is because, they know I wouldn't care and I'm not changing anymore. Could be a portion of it is because at this point I have money, and in the Hasidic space, it's hard to tell somebody with money to like do
course.
something
Ooh.
because you need to flip.
That's a hot.
Yeah, I know.
like
You
that.
get away
I'm
with
like-
more because of your financial status.
Yes,
Ah.
I
You get away
definitely
with
think.
more because of your financial
Money
status.
does talk.
Money
really does.
talk. But Faygee, I want to get a little bit personal. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
if
go
you
ahead.
don't want to answer, you don't have to. Okay,
You could
but
just say
Yeah.
none of your
because
business.
I think the only way to actually get this message across is if we use a real life example
ahead.
here. Okay, right now you're not covering your elbows, right? That's fine. In
Yeah.
normal day of life, you hear it. That's perfectly normal. When you go to a wedding, a Hasidic wedding in Williamsburg, this is not okay. And a matter of fact, it's very offensive for them. Very offensive. Okay. So if you go to a wedding in Williamsburg or in Monroe, it sounds to me like you wouldn't look to cover your elbows particularly, or even wear a skirt that's below your knees, which is very offensive to the, not even just for Hasidim, but even in any Orthodox, Do you think that you should be covering it up for the sake of blending in? Or do you think, no, this is the line? I want to know, is that the line or do you have a different line?
I have no problem wearing longer sleeves if I was to come to Williamsburg. I have tattoos on my arm. And to me, it's a whole separate conversation too, right? So instead of having to have that conversation, I'd rather just wear longer sleeves. It's funny because a couple months ago, I had gone out with my siblings. And bear in mind, we had gone out with 5 or 6 of the siblings. Obviously, my husband and I came. We're the ones that are different. And we had gone out to the city before this, and we were meeting afterwards for dinner. And like right before we were headed there, I was like, I know I'm wearing jeans, but I'm also wearing short sleeves. I think one of the others got to go. Let me at least go pick up another shirt so that I have longer sleeves. And you know what? We're all sitting at the table. Nobody was seeing what I was wearing below that. So it looked very respectful. I went over to the Aritzia store, got myself an oversized sweatshirt. Never mind, it was boiling hot. But I'm like, I'll suck it up for this time because you know what? I don't want to have that be that I'm sitting at the table and all you're looking at is like what I'm wearing rather than who I am. And it was an amazing dinner. We took great pictures, but you'll see I'm the odd one out and so is my husband. And it doesn't matter because the family chose to be accepting, but is there a point that they were accepting because they needed something? Perhaps, and I do think that it happens often and where money will let you get away with certain things. Like we pay full tuition at school. The school will never call us for anything because we're one of the very few that still pay full tuition. So it's going to be something that like you could get away with certain things based on the fact that I don't need something from you. Now you need something from me.
Ooh.
By the way,
Wow.
and I'm okay with that because at the end of the day, money does make things go around and around.
It's just the reality.
It's the reality. It
Yeah.
is what it is. Yeah, it's fine. We have to try to, curb it as much as we can, not let it influence our decisions in very big ways where it affects other people's lives. But that's been going on for, thousands of years, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. But I'm very impressed with you that you went and you thought about it. But Faygee, I don't mean to give you a hard time, but it almost sounds like you did it for yourself. It sounds like you were somewhat like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want people looking at me, asking me questions. I'd rather just cover up. Not so much because, I'm with them and this is kind of their, this is what their beliefs are. And I want to appease them. I want to just blend in because I respect them. It didn't come from that place, it sounds like. It sounds like it came more of...
It was a little bit of both because generally I go out with my sisters often. We probably at least see each other once every month or every other month. And they've already seen me in my element like this, right? So it wasn't for them. It was more so their husbands that came with them. I don't want them to feel like, maybe their wives shouldn't hang out with me for some reason because of what I do or what I wear. And
Right.
so I wanted to be more respectful a little bit for their sake, more so than for my sake. Because for me, like, you don't want to talk to me tomorrow. I don't give a shit,
Yeah.
But for them, like, I didn't want it to be an opportunity for them to be told, like, oh, perhaps you shouldn't be going for dinner with her. Go out without her,
Yeah.
And I like my relationship with my sisters. I freaking love them. Like, I feel like I have the strongest relationship with my sisters now more than I had when I was growing up. Like, we
Right.
were fighting cats and dogs back in the day. But, like,
Yeah.
we were girls that were in high school. Like, 3 out of 4 of my sisters were in high school at the same time. We were very competitive about certain things back then. But, like, now we're in a place where we honestly could have great conversations. We can have a really good time. We'll talk about our past and all the challenges we've been through as kids growing up in our house.
Do you think any of your sisters secretly kind of, look at your life now and think to themselves, maybe we kind of missed the boat, maybe Faygee's onto something,
I feel like secretly they probably like maybe have a certain inklings of like, this is so much more fun, like,
yeah,
and like, I'd want to do this more often, and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
for sure. You know what the biggest problem with a lot of the ultra-Orthodox Hasidim, let's call them that, when they decide this is not the path that I want, this is too much, this is very extreme, I want something else. A lot of times they don't realize that it's not black and white, right? It's not either you're very Hasidish or you're not religious at all, and you start wearing a cross tomorrow morning. Like, there's a lot of real estate in between. You can live a very healthy life by being very religious and having certain beliefs, and you could have a very good quality of life.
But
right?
you can see that as an outsider.
But that's
as a
our job. Our
Hasidic
job is to
person,
teach these people.
No, the Hasidic people don't feel like that. Like, I remember when I chose to have my eldest daughter go to Prospect, and Prospect is a very frum school, but it's considered a modern school in the Hasidic environment. It's not a Hasidic school. It's not like Pupa or Satmar or Baviv, and it would be her first grandchild going to a school like that. I remember thinking like, oh my God, my kid's going to public school. That's what my mom thought, she's going to public school.
Right.
And if only she could imagine, like, the school she was in then, like, at least was only girls. Like, at the point that, like, my kids are in schools that are co-ed, they're great schools. And, shout out to my kids' schools, like Yeshivat Noam and Frisch are amazing schools. Cost an arm and a leg compared to a Hasidic school, but amazing schools. I think my kids have grown into the people they've become because of having opportunities to have gone to a school that was so special. I don't think they would have been the same people had they stayed in the system that we were coming from. But my parents, especially my mom, felt like I'm literally going to this path of like the extreme. So, which is basically, it wasn't. I was wearing a longer skirt. Now look at the street. Most everybody's wearing a long skirt. But 20 years ago, a long skirt was like, oh my God, I'm trying to be modern. Modern or religious or not religious, which route would you rather me have taken, obviously,
But the problem is that a lot of times, people, in your circles growing up, and, Williamsburg and Monroe, or even in Israel and Meisharim, they're very sheltered. They don't know what's out there, and they don't know how to adjust to their new reality. As soon as they get a little bit of freedom, they get a taste of it, they go out there and they go wild. Like the Amish, right? They actually force their children at a certain age to go out and experience the world. And they tell them, you have a choice to come back afterwards. And if you come back, it's for good. Like, once you come back, you're making your decision.
I believe it's when they're 18.
When they're 18?
It's called Rumspringa.
Rumspringa. There you go. So Rumspringa is an Amish concept.
I want to do a Rumspringa.
Yeah.
Oh my God, can we do it still?
Yeah,
The same?
Rumspringa.
Yeah.
Is it really called Rumspring?
Let's do it.
What a
Super
great
cool.
name, by the way. Like, if I had to think of a name for this type of concept of going out into the world and just party and do everything you want, go Rumspring.
I like that.
We have a little
Rumspringa.
Rumspring
It's called
action.
Shana Aleph. The first year in Israel.
First year in
there's a
Israel.
Rumspringa.
Us
What a
Hasidic
word.
people didn't get no Shana Aleph or anything like that. So, like,
Yeah.
we didn't have those years. You get
Credit to the
married
person
right
who
out
thought
of
the
school.
word Rumspring. A
I
lot of
like
credit
that.
to them.
I like that. But
But-
you should know that when I first got married, the first time, I remember, like, I was seeing, my ex-husband opening the light. I was thinking he was going to get electrocuted. Like, literally, I'm like, you haven't died? Like, you turn on the TV.
Right?
Holy shit.
That's a
like, how do you
world that
do
people
that?
actually live in,
That's
where they
what, like-
think that if I open the light, lightning is striking me
Yes.
right now. And then when it doesn't happen, they're, oh, wow, this is interesting. Then they try something else. And before you know it, they go completely off. And this is where the problem starts, is they don't know how to actually strategically do this. They don't understand that, okay, you were probably a little bit, taught a little bit too much. We agree. You were way too sheltered. It was way too extreme. But bring it
They
down a
can't
couple
find
of
the
notches.
balance. I agree.
Bring a couple of notches. You don't have to go now into
that.
first gear from fifth gear. All of a sudden, you take a quick break and you have an accident because of it. There has to be a lot of education that needs to go around, because the Hasidic community is growing. growing. You see what's going on in Monroe and Kiryas Yero?
I have to interject. They're also thriving.
Sure.
There's something that works.
But
with what
Michael,
they
there
do.
is a portion
Yeah.
of that community that is, let's call it collateral damage.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a percentage. I don't know if it's 10%, 15%, whatever the number is, that automatically, it's going to happen, it's unavoidable, that they're going to go out of the community and they're going to fall very hard. And we have to make sure that we provide and there is a lot of programs that are out there. It's
become
available.
much more prevalent. It wasn't there
today. 20 years ago,
it was not available. I'm sorry
it was
to
not
say.
available. When you grew up, in your times, you did not have that assistance.
Agreed. It was like you had to kick them out of the house because it would be bad for your other kids. Like it was like literally almost like the parents felt obligated to stop talking to that kid because they're like the cancer that's going to hurt every other kid in the house. I feel like there is much more available now. I still think that there's a very large stigma, almost like the siblings from this kid that decided to like go a different path is now like hurting the other kids and their chances of staying in schools or getting into schools. I find it hard to believe that like society hasn't changed and the schools haven't kept up with so much of it. For kids to have to beg to get into schools, if they want to stay in a religious school, why wouldn't you keep them? You know, I think that that's the part that like the
that's a whole other topic. School systems and how it works. You know, throwing a kid out because of how their family is or whatever it might be. Okay, that's a whole nother conversation.
Just to circle back on the Rumspringa thing, if the Amish person the 18-year-old does not choose to come back and go back to their community, they're shunned.
They're shunned.
Really?
Right, yes.
They're kicked out. They're done. They cannot see their family.
Mm-hmm.
They're
shunned.
They're gone.
They lose their relationship forever with their family and they can't come back. So it's a very big decision for them.
There was a movie like this, Divergent or something like that?
Right? No. You're talking about Banshee.
No, that's a show. I'm talking about, there's also a movie called Divergent where
they leave the community?
They pick a faction. And once you pick that faction, you're done. There's no turning back.
They made a show also, a Lifetime series about Amish, that go through this Rumspringa. We got to, by the way, have a drinking game with the Rumspringa. Every time we say Rumspringa from now on, we take a shot. But I got to tell you, it's a fascinating topic, and it's a very controversial one, Faygee. And the bottom line is, I believe, this is just my little small-minded way of thinking, is everybody should do what works for them that makes them happiest. What works for you that makes you happy? Because if you're not happy,
then nothing else matters.
That is the beginning of all problems.
I agree.
And you have to strive to just be as happy as you can be. And religion is super important, arguably the most important thing. But you know what comes before religion? Your self-happiness, your self-care. Because you can't have a relationship with God. You can't have a relationship with your peers if you don't have a relationship with yourself first.
Agreed.
It starts and ends with you. So you got to be happy. And if this life isn't working for you, and you're miserable, and you're hiding it, and you're stuck inside your shell because of it, you're not doing a service to anyone. You're doing a disservice to yourself and to the future generations that you could be bringing up. And you're also creating a snowball effect of unhappiness around you.
Agreed.
And you're making your kids go through that type of life. And
you're repeating the generation.
Much more open-minded.
I agree. I think that most people aren't naturally just happy, though. And it's a choice to make, to wake up in the morning and say, I choose to be happy. I want to be happy. And I think that that's something that I've worked hard on, and saying like, I'm not going to let things get in my way of being happy. I don't care what happens. Like, I'm choosing to be happy. And I think that it's what people gravitate around me to like want to be with me and like spend time with me, because like I truly choose the path of like being happy, not because it's the path of least resistance. It's obviously the path that sometimes takes the most work, but it's such a good choice. And where I see the days that I'm happy, everybody around me is just happy. It's a happier day. Things are more positive.
You basically perpetuate what you feel.
It's
so if you're a happy person, right, you're going to put that happiness onto someone else, and it's going to bounce back to you, which is going to make you happier. But when you're bringing that negativity into
nobody wants to be about,
it reverberates all over, and everybody gets more negative from it.
Yeah, I agree. I think nobody wants to be about negative Nelly all the time. Nobody wants to hear everything that they didn't do right. Yeah, like, please leave me alone. Like, I want to just hear everything that's going well. Like, I tell this to my team all the time. Like, tell me something positive. Don't only give me the negative. Like, you'll always see when I'm starting a conversation, it will always be I say something nice first. Even if it's something to the team that I need to relay to them, my first thing will always be something nice and something positive to make it cheerful.
Don't you think it should be the opposite, though?
No, because otherwise
Say
you're
the nice thing at the end.
No, you can end off with something nice too. But like if you start the conversation with a negative, your head is already in that space and where I can't listen to you anymore, because like I said, in my head, you already told me I'm not good enough. So now anything you say, you're not hearing the same way.
Talk about this because
because like I don't. No.
You know that they say when you slap a child, which you shouldn't be doing, right? But back in the day, they would do that.
Who didn't get
but
hit
they would say then, like if they thought like this was the remedy, you're softening the blow, so to speak, is after you smack them, give them a kiss or give them a hug. You know, just to
that's bullshit. And we all know that
agree
that
by that. I
didn't
think
work.
the whole thing is messed up. Don't smack them to begin with, right? Take a whole nother approach. We've learned today as we've evolved.
Oshi, if I told you something nice, would you not be more open to hearing what I have to say,
No, because I
even
think
if it
you're
was something negative?
patronizing me. And it sounds like,
No, it's depending on how you say
but
it.
then,
You're not
but then I
supposed to
don't
come-
believe the next thing you said, but it was, oh, wait a second. Now that's why they started with something nice, because they wanted to, but I feel like it's more genuine, more authentic. If you come out there and you say what you have to say, obviously be respectful, be polite. I'm not saying, be very tough about it, but try to do it the best way you can, but say it. And then end off with something nice. So this way they know. And by the way, having said that, here's what I think you're doing amazing. They'll be more receptive to it.
No,
They know
I
you're being
disagree
real.
on that one.
They
We
know
could
you're
agree
being
to disagree.
real. They just experienced you
No,
being real.
honestly, Oshi, I'm also going to disagree because if you start off authentically giving a compliment, they'll feel it right away.
That is not authentic anymore.
It is. If you're
Because they
saying-
realize the only reason why you told
No,
me
it's
I
not
didn't
true.
is because
Start with
you
a nice
knew
comment.
No.
you were going to tell me something afterwards that was hard to hear, and that's why you picked something in the beginning to say something.
No, but if you always say that, meaning regardless of what I have to say with you, I'm always going to be positive with you. I'm always going to say something nice. Regardless if I have something negative to say after that or not, I'm always going to do that. So I always start the conversation the same way, regardless of being positive about something, be it of how you did your work week
Okay.
last week, what you did.
By the
So
way,
it's
how
not
about
only
both?
for that.
How about say something nice before, then get to your message?
Yeah, I
and
like
then
that.
end
Yeah.
with
That's
something
what Fagy
nice.
was
do.
saying. I love
You
that.
sandwich it in
Yeah.
between.
Yeah, agree.
I like how we circled back in the beginning. We started talking about your self-care. We ended off talking about Oshi's recognition of self-care. I always talk about, self-love. You have to recognize yourself, right? Before you can recognize God or others, your family, your friends, your business. And we have to wrap up. Guys, we're having such a good time. We're already an hour in. And we've been hearing a lot of feedback that people want to keep it, in that range.
Okay.
But before we end, I have a couple of few questions that I prepared that I want to ask you.
Okay.
And you could just answer me right away, or you can, talk about it more. Oshi can look through his cards to see if he has any questions. I want to know, given the Olympics that are happening right now, one sport that you would pick, what would it be for you to be the best at, a gold medal?
I used to say it would be swimming because I really loved swimming. And then one summer, right before I got married, I was going to be a lifeguard that summer. And then my mom shut the plans down and I never got to be the lifeguard that year. And it's sort of had me rethink about loving swimming anymore. And so I would have changed my mind on that. That
Swimming is
probably
a
would have done.
tough sport.
It is.
They have to swim sometimes 8 laps.
I used
back
to
and
love
forth.
it.
It's and they do it back and forth, Michael. There's no breaks.
That's right.
You have to have real endurance for that. Do you know what the most popular, most watched sport is in the Olympics?
What
In the
is it?
Summer Olympics I'm talking about, not the Winter Olympics.
I'm going to assume swimming.
No?
Really?
Swimming
What
is on
it?
the list. It's in the top 10.
Yeah.
Really? What is it?
The most watched sport in Olympics is gymnastics.
I was going to say that next.
Yeah, gymnastics.
It's
It's
probably
fun
the
to
only.
watch.
Yeah.
It really is. Oh my God. The
Yeah.
flips that these people could do. Oh
It's
my God.
amazing.
My head
Yeah,
spins.
Yeah. They work all day, every day.
It's
their whole life.
amazing. I always wished I could do that, by the way, but I wasn't flexible.
Well,
enough for
on that note, what is it that you would do if you didn't have to work? What would you like?
What's your go-to hobby that you can do for fun that you
Oh,
would?
gamble. I call it church.
Ooh, I'm with you.
I say I'm
Can we
going
go
to
together?
church. Yeah, absolutely.
Ah.
What's your game?
Well, all games. I'm
Okay,
not prejudiced. I like all
okay.
games. I hate blackjack
Okay, I love poker.
because I feel like
so-
you always lose on blackjack. I feel like it's a losing game. It's a losing proposition. You know how you win in blackjack?
Statistically, it's the one that you could win the best.
No. You know how you win in blackjack? The secret is you come in there saying, I'm only playing 10 hands. And whatever happens in those 10 hands,
You have to
I'm
get
walking
out.
away. Because how they get you is you could go on a
You
run.
get greedy.
It happens. You go on a run, but the more you stay, you're
more
giving
you
it all
lose.
back.
Yep.
Giving it all, and then some. With interest, you're giving it back.
Yeah, I call it. I go to church. So my kids know if I'm getting dressed, I'm going to church. They really know where it's.
I have a good question.
Go ahead.
What was the largest amount of money in one sum that you either earned, that you won, inherited? Doesn't matter how you got it. But what was the largest amount of money that you can remember that you got in one shot? And it was you got one check, you got one, in
Oh,
one
at
time.
gambling or somewhere else?
Anywhere.
Anything. Gambling too.
Gamble.
I doubt it was gambling.
Maybe it
but-
was an invoice that was paid. Maybe
yeah,
it was,
exactly. It was
Well-
one chunk of money.
Well, I won a lot of money off a 2-5 offsuit hand in poker, and man, that was still my best hand to date. And I won a few $1,000s off that hand, and it was just so fun seeing the face of this person that was a jerk next to me when he lost with his trip 2s because he had 2-7, but I had 2-5, and he gave me a full house on the flop, and he lost. Man, you should have. That guy thought
So
I
you
was
play
stupid.
poker, I
I love
gather?
playing poker. And
One
I
of the
think,
best rules of poker is that when it's heads up, you can trash talk.
oh my
And
goodness,
I wait for those moments.
It's all about trash talk.
Yeah.
It's,
you
it's
can't-
heads up.
you
insane
can't do
though.
that
about
with-
it.
right.
Yeah.
It's insane though because we talk about healthcare and women in healthcare and obviously you guys have your opinion about women in healthcare. I'm obviously a woman that maximizes being a woman in healthcare, but maximizing being a woman at the poker table. Let's talk about that.
That is true. You know, the women don't get enough street cred when it comes to poker.
Man,
Yeah, it's a
I
man's
pretend
game.
to be that stupid girl at the table, and then I literally rip them by the time I'm gone. And you should know that I often play in Chicago when I'm at work. I'll stay at the table, you know, after work and after I'm doing stuff. And I've created cred for myself at a poker table, you know, literally in a way that like when I'm back there, they all just want to play with me because I've got guts. I don't care about losing $500. Like it's not about the $500. It's more about the thrill about what I could get.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll call on hands that most other people would never call. I usually wear my glasses, you know, and so like, you know, I'll fiddle with them. I'll read my emails. I told you that.
I was at a poker game in Atlantic City. I was with my brother at the time, and I was playing at a game at the poker table. And I remember, I'll never forget this. I was in a hand. I was all in, and the person against me was all in as well. It was a decent amount of money. It wasn't major. It was under $1,000, but it was, you know, it was a healthy amount, $700-800. And I won the hand. The other person lost. And, you know, as he's throwing his cards, he goes, oh, God, there goes my weekly paycheck. And he gets up and he leaves. And he gets to my brother and I turned towards each other like, oh, God, you know, like I felt really bad about it. I felt really bad about it. And I decided since then, when I go to casinos, I don't play poker.
Really?
Yeah, I don't want to play poker because I'm here at the casino. I want to take the casino's money. They can afford to give me money. I'm probably not taking their money either. I'm giving them money, but for the hopes of taking their money, I want to take their money. I don't want to take another person's money at the poker table.
Why don't you just start a poker game and say, hey guys, what do you all do for a living? Maybe that'll be a little more
No, but you have to imagine that 90% of the people at the game
anyway, of course.
is not uber wealthy. They're probably just, you know, average or trying to scrape by. You know, the really wealthy people are not playing.
Yeah, most
poker.
money in casinos are made from the slot machines of a social
You should know that some people at this at this casino that I go to in Chicago do this for a living. This is what their job is. They literally sit there for hours every day.
They're
and
sharks. That's what they do.
Yeah.
They wait for guys like me and you to get there.
Well, I'm not considered a small fish anymore. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but we're not professionals, though.
No, not professionals, but I've gotten in some good hands with these peoples and walked away with several $1,000s.
Why don't you join the World Series of Poker, the $10,000 buy-in? They do once a year in Vegas. You know, the winner gets like I don't know, $5 million, whatever it is, maybe even more than that. Why don't you join it? It's $10,000.
Ooh, I like that
I
idea.
don't like to play that. I like to play real, like, just, I like it
Like a
as
local
a skill.
small
I like
cash
it as a skill. I think it's taught me, to have patience is one thing I don't really
gotta have patience.
Man, because
Michael.
you got to wait for the right hand and when to do it and who to do it against, but also getting to know your opponents at the table, right? Watching their moves.
Mm-hmm.
It is so interesting. And like, you could be sneaky about things, pretending you're on the phone or listening to music and watching and listening to what they're saying, and they're thinking that you're not paying attention.
Wow,
Man,
look
like,
at this girl.
I'm
I am not
really
playing poker
sneaky.
with you.
Oh my goodness.
I am not getting on the same
I'm
table.
telling you, I've won, like, I came in the game with $400 and left with over $4,000 several different occasions already. Because, like, at the end of the day, it's about really taking the time to understand that, like, I may not have the best hands always, but how I play it will allow me to do that. And once you have enough money at the table, like, you could literally have the shittiest hand and literally scare people to, like, you literally bulldoze them, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, are you going to risk your ace king now against $2,000? Are you willing to bet that money? Maybe not, because you don't even have a peer anymore. And I may have just had 2-3 offsuits, but I could do
poker,
it.
the best hand doesn't always win.
Agreed.
It's a very evil game, poker, because, you know, it's frustrating. You do everything right, and then somebody else doesn't even know what they're doing, and they win. They beat you.
Sounds like a game of life.
A game of life, exactly.
It's true. It's a matter of
My
luck
last
sometimes.
question, Faygee. I think this is a very important question.
Go ahead.
I think our listeners can really benefit from this. Okay, what are some of your tips, things that you've learned, on how to save money in your personal life in general? Just how to save money. Anything.
You're asking the wrong person.
I'm asking the wrong person. You don't save money.
I'm investing it.
You're
She invests in jewelry and watches.
No.
You misunderstood. You
Okay,
misunderstood
go
the
ahead.
question. It's not about a savings account. It's not about
Okay.
saving and accruing money. It's not what I'm asking. I'm asking a trick to save money to, let's say, lower your phone bill or to spend less money in the grocery because, you know, you get
I can
coupons.
save
An advice and
everybody.
a tip that you know. That you
I can save money for any person around me, right? So, like, what we do for work, right, is help save money for labor. And it's something that I do really well, right?
But for yourself,
for myself, I like to spend money. That much I can tell you.
it's like the shoemaker walking around shoeless. He walks around barefoot.
Well, it's quite the opposite here. She's spending the money. She's having a good time. She doesn't need the shoes.
Yeah. I'm saying her job is to save.
No, but
people
I
money.
think you can be smart about doing both. It's not
So
about.
you're a spender. Is your husband the same way?
I think we're both spenders in a way that.
You know what's very frustrating? When one of you is a spender, one of you is a saver. That dynamic doesn't work.
Yeah,
well.
I agree, because like shopping on Sundays would be so boring if we could, like spend.
That's how couples get into fights. The number one thing couples fight about is finances. That's the number one thing that they
Oh,
fight
I agree. Like, that can be a major concern sometimes. But I think that it works for me in where I've balanced, like, what is it that I'm putting away? What is it I'm allowed to spend? I work really hard, right? And so I want to be able to live that life, and where if I'm working this hard, I need to enjoy life too.
Good for you.
So it goes both ways.
I
So,
like it. I like it. You won't hear me complain.
Faygee, this was a lot of fun.
yeah, this
I love getting to know you more on a personal level, and hearing you guys get to know each other also.
I'm still going to share the videos from back in the day with Ushi because I think he'll have a good laugh about it.
Especially me, because I was a little bit involved then. I
Yeah,
knew what was going on.
we're gonna make a
Short
documentary.
I
one day
would
out of it.
love to hear, see what, get some memories.
Yeah,
Not all were good, but some were fantastic. I'd
Yeah.
love to relive that a little bit.
Yeah, no, that it was fun times. And speaking of fun times, this was fun, and thank you so
Yeah,
much for joining
Of
us.
course. Thank you so much for having me.
And I look forward to seeing you at more trade shows and doing good all around the world. And thank you again.
Yeah, very
Awesome.
nice. Thanks, Faygee.
It's a wrap.
Thank you so much.
What a fantastic episode that was. Getting to know Faygee, her background, her business, the world that she lived in, the world that she's currently living in. The notes that I made is it started in talking about greed versus green. I love that. We're talking about a lot of things that we figured out is anger, and when people talk and just not letting the words hurt you, which is something that, resonates well with me, because sometimes I hang around people that are just angry and just like, you listen to them and you just ignore the words because they're just words. Don't let it hurt you. So, and learning about her experience as a woman, I love that she said that it helped her because I'm a big fan of that. Ushi, what do you take out of it?
So I am very impressed with how successful Faygee has become, but not because she became successful. A lot of people became successful. But the challenges that she had to face early on, given that, she didn't go to college, right? She didn't have that education that typically people have. So she had to overcome a lot. And also being a woman in healthcare, I still believe that it is certainly a little bit more challenging than for a man, just given, our space and our environment. But I'm very impressed by how she didn't make herself a victim, right? She didn't just, take it on the chin and say, this is my lot, and just complain about it, which a lot of people do. And she actually made something of herself. And what I was really impressed with is that I got the sense like she's really in a good place today. She's very happy. And that's the ultimate thing people strive for, is to just be happy. So if she found some recipe, some secret sauce to how to be happy, it's be true to yourself. Don't get caught up and stuck on what other people want from you, what other people expect of you, even your parents. Even your family, which is the hardest people to walk away from. Nobody wants to disappoint their family. Nobody wants to be a failure in their parents' eyes. So it was very brave of her, very courageous of her, that she went out and she forged her own path. I mean, she went through a marriage, she got divorced, and then she married again, and she has kids. And, all of this could have potentially never have happened if she didn't make certain decisions in her lifetime. And I really shudder to think how many other people are out there in the world that aren't the best versions of themselves because they haven't made certain difficult decisions, but necessary decisions. So for me, I hope our listeners, anybody that's struggling internally, anybody that, questions, should I, shouldn't I, go for it. Take that risk. Do it. Because if you don't, you're going to live with that question your whole life. And I think that is the most painful thing that someone can experience. So for me, that was something that I really, really enjoyed, talking it through with Faygee.
I agree. And I love that that's where the None of Your Business podcast is heading, talking about professional, personal lives and growing and staying positive and being happy amongst all of our anxieties. And we're learning and growing together. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, follow. Thank you again, Prime Source, and to all of our listeners and their feedback. We love it. See you next time.